So while the slides are warming up, I just want to know how many of you know Peter Schiff? Okay, pretty much, yeah. Yeah, he's been bitching about Bitcoin since 2002. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but if he could, he would have done that. And so I've been watching a lot of those debates between Bitcoin and gold. And since gold has gone up so much in the last few months, that now Peter Schiff is really bragging about it. And he's looking at the last 2.5 years, and he keeps saying those things. Well, in the last 2.5 years, Bitcoin crashed. Obviously, he's picking 2.5 years because that works for his rhetoric. Because if you look at it in the last 6 weeks or 6 months, Bitcoin has done better. And definitely, if you look at it for the last 10 years, 5 years. So obviously, he's picking exactly that 2.5 year window and keeps talking about it. Is this going to warm up? And so that's one of the reasons I went through a lot of, for this debate here, for this virtual debate, I went through a lot of YouTube channels of the last 2 years talking about Bitcoin versus gold. Obviously, there's a lot more that came up recently because of the gold going up like this. And one of them is the zero hedge debate. So I'm not sure how many of you have seen it. Nobody has seen it. Okay, so it'll be interesting. You'll get an idea. So my point here is actually, if you meet gold bugs, how many of you are gold bugs? So okay. So I'm gonna just have to filter out my speech a little bit, so not to insult you a little bit. But if you do meet gold bugs, then you'll be able to know what kind of arguments you're going to say. Yeah? So my name is Phil Champagne. I'm the author of the Book of Satoshi and Bitcoin versus Altcoin. And so I remember in '98, I was listening to a speech about Alan Greenspan, which was the Federal Reserve Chairman at the time. And everybody was listening to what he's going to say. And then the market's going to react to this, and I couldn't understand why a single guy, bureaucrats, would have so much power on the Dow Jones, the Wall Street, everything, And it didn't make sense to me. Obviously, the fact that I was coming from Canada and moved to the US in '96, and we didn't have that much of a thing in Canada about what is the Central Bank of Canada is going to do about interest rate. Well, it wasn't advertised as much anyway, It's much more dominant in the US. And so actually, Canada is pretty much reflecting whatever the US is going to decide. So I was just wondering what the hell. So I was young and clueless. And the photo I have here is we're trying to do a Christmas card in 2004. And our puppy dog, 6 months old, a 6 months old lab was not cooperating. So I think we took 30 photos of this, and it was biting my hands and everything. My daughter's laughing. It's like another thing, It was funny. Anyway, so I went through a different phase. In 2002, a CPA told me about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that means, wow, okay, yeah. Investing in real estate is a way to fight inflation, because then you're getting an artificial gain from the depreciating mortgage. And but in 2007 and 2008, when I started reading about gold, silver, and the Austrian school, and now I understood exactly what was going on. And A Creature from Jekyll Island, an excellent book, by the way. And now I totally understood what was going on. And so in 2012, I was coming from the Austrian school when I learned about Bitcoin. So for me, it was just a tiny jump. And the fact that it was in software as well, it was easy for me to understand this whole thing, And fascinated about this. And I realized, wow, that guy, Satoshi, left after 2 years. And I could understand that this would be history. All these texts will be history. In 2012, 2014, when I published a book, I understood that, well, in 10 years, it's going to be looked at in 2024, and even more in 3034, and so on. So it's what is really important to understand is we go through a matter of perspective. It's all about a matter of perspective. When people, 1903, they were looking at the car, bulky, you have to crank this up, and it doesn't go well on roads, dirty roads, and mostly because everything was bumpy. There was no asphalt anywhere. Certainly no highways. There was not even a concept. Highways or ramps and garage stations were extremely rare. So with the infrastructure of the time, people were looking at the infrastructure at the time and say, that car is not going to take off. So the same thing could be said of Bitcoin in 2010, 2012. Many were dismissing it because, well, there's barely any exchange. It's just there's no infrastructure, it's slow, and so on and so on. Not thinking that we'll have highways, Lightning Network, and that's just a start. And so they're slowly realizing now, more and more people, as the market grows up, as the infrastructure is building up around it, that yeah, it's actually something of value. And so these milestones really increase the number of people that jump into Bitcoin. And the funny thing is really 2020 with the COVID lockdown and all the printing they've done, that's one of those where I've heard so many people telling me they jump into Bitcoin is that wake them up is actually the lockdowns and all the printing they had to do. And so it's interesting with that. But Cyprus banks bail in. Remember that. And it's like, wow, they're seizing the people's cash in a bank account. Wow, and it's like those who had more than 100,000 euros over there, they were in trouble. That pushed the price of Bitcoin from $100 to 250 in just a month or two, because of everybody could see this. This news was really waking things up. And the Silk Road actually, for not that much in price, but what it proves is that, well, the FBI and the Marshal, U.S. Marshal, they seized those Bitcoins, but they didn't just destroy it like if it was drugs. If they seized drugs, they destroy it. They actually sold them in auction. So actually now it's proof to a lot of public, and it's like they're treating this as a legitimate asset. So that was another little bit of a red pill, orange pill, sorry. And Bitcoin ETF lately, So I can see that the future of milestone, as Bitcoin goes higher and higher in price, then it will be possible for bigger countries to actually include that as a reserve. And that will be another layer of legitimacy that will come up in the minds of people. And it's really, just think about what I said about the car. It's the same kind of concept that happens. And with the price of inflation, the inflation going up, that's also right now, as of now, waking up people. And we'll have a slide just for that. And that's one of my favorite. When Bitcoin reaches the market cap of gold, that is going to be more than magistral, very important in the minds of people, mostly in Wall Street. Maybe not us, regular guys, but those nuts in Wall Street will do. It's a photo we took when my wife and I went to a BLM land north of Las Vegas. Dunes of 250 feet high, sands of dunes of sand, piles of sand. And you walk over there, and then suddenly you see, wow, even more, another peak later. It's just fascinating to see this. But we picked that picture for just showing that the perspective is changing. And just like I'm wondering for you guys, what made you go through Bitcoin and realize, looking at Bitcoin and be interested about Bitcoin, So now we're going to go through the list of arguments. And like I mentioned earlier, they are often picking up, Peter Schiff, for example, he's repeating the same arguments over and over. I know, so unless he's going to be having another debate, I know he's going to repeat the same thing over again. And indeed, but often people have not mentioned the arguments. I wish they were counter-arguments, So one of the first that is important as a distinction is that Karl Menger was the founder of the Austrian School of Economy. Actually, it first brought up those concepts. And to him, money was more like, okay, something that has utility, well, like gold, and that you know that, somebody's going to need it, and then it emerge as money because of this eventually. Even though if you don't, you know somebody else is going to need to use it. But Ludwig von Mises went further ahead, and he says, actually, no. It's just the notion that somebody else will want it, regardless if it's for utility or just to keep it or just to use it as money to trade it and so on. Basically, it's the market that decides, and it doesn't matter what it is. And that's actually quite pivotal, because the point I want to bring is that Peter Schiff keeps saying that, gold, Bitcoin doesn't have any utility. At least gold can be used in jewelry and so on. But that's completely ridiculous an argument in itself, because, first, so only 5 or 10% of the gold is being used for its utility. It's mostly as money. And the second thing is, the reason why gold emerged as money is because of the convenience as gold coins. Now, crude oil, I'm sure that if you've used crude oil in some form to come over here, it's even more useful. But I don't think anybody's going to use crude oil in their pocket to pay for apples, And so you see that the utility, it might be good, but the convenience is definitely the key point. And now imagine a third guy who's got his cell phone, and he's just scanning a QR code and then paying for the apple with his Bitcoin wallet. So that's even more convenient than gold. So really, the convenience is the key, and it's not utility. And that's an argument I wish was said to Schiff. Another argument he keeps talking about, I call that, I came up with that term, geopolitical second guessing. Because, so what if the government sees it? What if the government do this? What if the government do that? Okay, yeah, but in all those points, gold is way more easier for the government to attack in multiple points. Because, FDR did it in 1933. Second, they can pretend they are not seizing it, but they're actually preventing you to have it in its real form, but you can have it in paper form, so on. It's backed by gold, trust us. Which is what happened for the US from 1933 all the way to 1974, 73, 75. I can't remember, where they allowed Americans finally the ability to own gold coins. They were not allowed to. Land of the free, home of the brave. Dow Jones and Bitcoin correlation, another point. It's just correlated with the stock market. Well, first of all, Bitcoin came up in 2009, just as the global financial crisis was finishing, and the stock market only had to go up. And Bitcoin, it was just brand new. It was zero, so it could only go up. So obviously there's a correlation in time for this, but it just happens to be. But other than that, I understand there is a correlation. But one of the points of that is that for mostly Wall Street, they don't look at Bitcoin necessarily as we do. And for them, it's like, okay, we've got a bunch of nerds that are working in Facebook and Apple, And so the NASDAQ stocks, whatever it does, we also have those computer nerds that are working on the Bitcoin mining and the Bitcoin protocol. Nerds, NASDAQ goes up, Bitcoin goes up, NASDAQ goes down. So we put all the nerds together, you know. But like I mentioned earlier, once the moment that Bitcoin approaches the stock market, the market cap of gold, that will start to change and give it a different set of attributes to Bitcoin. You know, it's also a safety, you know, and it's going to turn into that mindset. So in essence, they sort of have a point, but temporary. Ah, yes, that one. They keep talking about this, and it's so, yeah. Volatility. Sorry. They brought this up at least 2 or 3 times during that 1.5 hour of speech, of a debate. And yeah, so what is silly about this is that if gold was to be used as gold money, as world reserve currency today, it will need to be at least a factor of 50 on this price to be able to absorb all the economic activity of the entire world today. It's too small. In fact, one of the idiots I remember a few years ago, well, gold can't be used as money because it's too small and it's not can't absorb all the economic activity. Yeah, okay, have this price, yeah, but not if it goes up. But the same argument can be said for Bitcoin, and definitely because gold is volatile as well. So you know they're in favor of gold, but their argument about gold is about Bitcoin being volatile also applies to gold. You know, and so this is for Bitcoin, it'll have to go by a factor of 200 or 2,000 at least, you know, to be able to absorb. Now, the other thing to do in addition to this is like contract. People tend to use whatever they are paid with. I'm paid in dollars. I'm paid in Bitcoin. I'm paid in gold. Whatever that is, they will measure price based on what they're paid for. What their contract, so my rent contract, my mortgage contract is in gold, silver, or dollar. That is where they're going to be using this as the metric of measurements of wealth. And regardless if this is good or not, we know with the US dollar or Canadian dollar, oh, mom, I'm 5'9", and then next year, you know, I will say my wife, you know, I'm 5'9". Next year I'm 5'10" because the ruler shrink. No, actually, I did not drain an inch. It's just the ruler that shrink. But the general population keeps thinking this way. You know, we don't, but yeah. Comparing apples to apples, yeah. There was some silliness of comparison of once when Bitcoin was approaching $1,000. You know, some were pointing out, well, it's value the same as the gold. Oh, gosh, yeah. Depending on which decimal point Satoshi would have picked, we would have a different. We had to wait, or we'd have got it sooner. You know, it's just silly on that point. But really, what is important is the market cap. You know, how much money, if I wanted to buy the entire gold at this current price, well, I need to $15 trillion, while it's 1.2 trillion for Bitcoin, a factor of 12.8. So just a few years ago, it was a factor of 50 or 100. Bitcoin is catching up. Whatever Peter Schiff has to say about it. That's why I'm saying that once the market cap are equivalent, it's going to be a major ripple effect. So what will be important is that people will look for a solution. You know, naturally speaking, they have this inflation, and then it says, where do I go? I'm sure that some of you have learned how the high inflation of the 70s, people went into gold and went from $35 to $800 USD. And so they know, well, need something. They went to gold because they know gold, the government can't print gold. unless we have Star Trek replicators, which we don't yet. And decentralization is key, which is what the gold is weak on. The inflation, another point that will be interesting, additional point in mind for people is like, wow, the inflation rate of gold has been traditionally between 1.5 and 2.5%. And now Bitcoin has just dropped to 0.8% with the latest halving. So another point that is major is like now it's really one of the most rare commodity, digital commodity. This is what happened in January 1980 at the peak of the commodity cycle. It went everybody was in investment in gold at the time, in silver, and they dismissed the stock market. In fact, I'm not sure how many of you have seen Superman 3 with Christopher Reeves. And there, the mean guy was actually invested in commodities, which is just funny. It's like, was not in stock. If that movie would have been done recently, it would have been stock, But at the time, everybody was like dismissing stock. They were flat in dollars, although it crashed in real inflation rate. And so at the time, gold went up all the way to being just a factor of 2.5 measured against the stock market, the global stock market and the bond market. Now, as of a few weeks ago, that was the picture, roughly, of what was in terms of market cap. Now, what will happen is like you see that gold could go a factor of 10 or maybe a factor of 5 if it goes to similar to a factor of 2 like last time. And but Bitcoin will have to do another gain in even more. And the fact that we're going to have all those favorable arguments in favor of Bitcoin so much easier, no storage fees and so on, that gold will face a real challenger this time. There was nothing like this. Bitcoin was not around there. In fact, maybe Satoshi was still in Pampers. Okay, matching gold and beyond. So when the market cap of Bitcoin matches that of gold, the mindset's going to really start to shift, and you're going to have all those paradigm shift. These conversation is going to keep up, and that will be interesting to see what's going to be said. And you'll see a different kind of conversation going on. So, what is the advantage of gold? Well, if I have gold coins in my hand, I don't have to rely on a network, don't rely on electricity. The only risk is I get mugged, because they'll see I have goals or my pockets are a little bit bumpy, And but it has a track record of 5,000 years. Think about it. When Bitcoin was just in Pampers as well, if in 2010, 2012. People say, I can imagine storing gold for 30 years, but I cannot imagine necessarily putting Bitcoin and hoping for 30 years, what will it be? So it was a different topic on that. But now that it's 15 years old, it's starting to be, wow, I can trust it to be 25 years old and so on. There's a fixed 21 million Bitcoin. And there's no threat of a robot mining Bitcoin on the moon. Well, you can imagine that it could happen. Think of it, all the gold that is being mined today is so hard. You have tons of dirt, the gold miners, tons of dirt, and they have to go and grasp fragments of gold pebbles, extraction out of this huge dirt, and it's 5 miles deep. The Romans, which were picking up the low-hanging fruits, they could not imagine something like this with the machinery that we use today and the chemical process. It's just beyond. Now, think about it in 30 years from now. Yeah, we might have robots mining gold on the moon or Mars, or we'll see what um, Elon Musk has to say about this. Disadvantages. Definitely, gold can be easily suppressed. The last time we had some sort of an audit of gold at the Fort Knox was the movie Goldfingers with James Bond, but then it was movie, who couldn't really see if it was really the Fort Knox. When really the last real audit of Fort Knox was in 1953. Do you really have the gold? Nobody knows. It always requires a third party for in electronic form. Even if you have a blockchain, the gold bugs talk about, well, a blockchain that is backed by gold now it will have value, but how it will still have the audit problem. In the case of Bitcoin, well, it's just about the physical connection, internet connection. So, in what case does gold has any advantage? And the only one, if you really believe this Mad Max scenario, we have nuclear war, or a coronal mass ejection, which, like the Carrington event in 1859, which fried up the telegraph. Well, they didn't have any kind of protection at the time, but it really fried them up. So if we have something major, either war or whatever, think of Mad Max and Mel Gibson, then if you see a high probability of this, I suggest you sell everything, move to Montana, buy a piece of land, guns and cows, and be ready. But if you don't, then I would, with a low probability of this, then you'll heavily think more or less like, well, Bitcoin's going to be the winner. So the people's thought process and all that, as we go from now on, is like, okay, we have freaking inflation that it's bothering me, just like what people think in the 70s. You understand that you need something the government can't touch, because like Ringo Starr said, everything the government touches turns to crap. He did say that, yeah. So yeah, they all realize we live in an electronic world, so we need something where we can be natively in electronic will be the best, obviously, because then you'll have something that needs to be decentralized. And that gold, oh gosh, gold doesn't fit the bill for that. It's 99.9% of transactions are electronic. And now they'll look, oh, there is that Bitcoin that my brother-in-law kept talking about to me since 2018. Now I'm going to start looking at it. So that's the kind of thing, the process that will go. So no matter what the gold buzz is going to say, the foundation is pointing towards Bitcoin displacing gold with the market cap and stealing. Gold will still be somewhere because people will still think the Carrington event could happen. But the point is that the value will be much more focused on Bitcoin for its properties. And that's the last slide. Yeah. So, any questions? Thank you. Yes?
I loved the presentation. I missed the beginning, but I'd like to, get your thoughts on where you see the trajectory in terms of gold and Bitcoin kind of taking up par. I know you can't guess, but if you have a sense, because it looks like that's going to be another really big moment for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And you made that really clear, which
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Obviously, charting or price prediction is you can easily make a price prediction or a time prediction, but both of them, that's really hard. So I can claim on price prediction that yes, Bitcoin will reach the market cap of gold, and that will be $700,000 or $800,000 per Bitcoin if it did at the current price of gold. Now, if the price of gold is doubles from now, then it's $1.6 million for Bitcoin's market cap to match that of gold. So it's like I said, it's not a real ruler, the US dollar or Canadian dollar. So at some point, we're going to have to look at gold as a pricing mechanism because everything's going to be so much of a mess in terms of pricing with dollars. But in terms of timing, I would say, if I have a gun pointed to my head, maybe by the end of 2030, we'll have something along those lines happening. Yes?
You haven't talked about the difficulty of using Bitcoin.
Yeah.
To me, that seems to be a much bigger impediment than the market cap of gold versus Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I went through the Bitcoin jungle to actually see it work,
Uh-huh.
and I was absolutely dumbfounded to see that it can really work. So I told Francis, I said, well, why can't we do something like this, for example, in Montreal? Why can't we go to the market here and get people in the market to accept Bitcoin and so on? And it's in Costa Rica, they have the SIMPay system, which really makes it easy to transfer money if you have a phone. So we don't have this here the same way. But to me, that is the biggest impediment. If I talk to my friends, for example,
Yeah.
that's one of the things. I mean, volatility is one of the things.
Yeah.
But the ease of use is we're still so far away.
You should have seen things in 2012.
By the way,
It was even worse.
gold
And
is not easy to use.
yeah, I understand. Yeah. So the point is, I understand your point, and it comes back to that horse and those breeders picking on the goal on the on this on the Ford on the T Model T or the cars. The infrastructure was really crude. As time goes by, they were a little bit better, but not perfect, and it grew. And so I think that there's a combination of things like if wallet of Satoshi, I could use that in US. Now I'm not able to anymore because they are afraid of the government, and until something changes politically, it makes things even easier, harder. Because actually, with something like wallet of Satoshi, it makes things extremely easy. Obviously, it's not full delegation. You still, but the point is you need to have a way for people to get in an easy way, and that is understandable that it's not, I cannot imagine my mother-in-law doing this. I understand that.
You can add something to that because here it's so easy to pay by credit card to have the infrastructure in those countries. Bitcoin can really help because you don't have this infrastructure. But
Yeah.
the day it will work here better is the day when the guy who has the shop will want you to pay Bitcoin. At that time, it will say, yeah, it will set up the whole thing to be able to pay Bitcoin because our fiat currency will be failing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Kind of to answer this question, I remember when eBay came out, I was buying things and people are like, "You're not scared of spending your money online?" And I bought a Sega Dreamcast. People were like, "How'd you get that for so cheap?" I'm like, "eBay." And yesterday I opened a bottle of wine and my friend liked it. And he's like, "Where'd you buy it?" I'm like, "Oh, from BC. I paid in Bitcoin." So it's like, how can I get one? I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to teach you how to use Lightning. So it's kind of like if you want to have access to this thing,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to come on like our network.
Yeah.
So
that's my point exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
I think one of the big issues is no one wants to spend their Bitcoin. I don't.
Yeah. Sharp man.
What do you think needs to change?
Yeah. So, well, I think you're a Canadian. So I think it's the same as the U.S. That first of all there's capital gain right up front, and because one of the things that often I hear about is like, well, what you do is like whenever you spend, you buy them automatically. If there wasn't any capital gain story behind all that, say you were in El Salvador, then actually that argument will not be as a problem since you would be able to, okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to automatically buy back next time. I'm going to have to spend this. So either I spend it in dollars or in Bitcoin. Well, in this case, I'm going to have everything in Bitcoin. And on my next paycheck, I'm going to turn that into Bitcoin, and I'm going to spend it as you're going to be using this really as your main currency. Even though it's just like in the 1800s, people were being paid in gold, and they were paying for things in gold. Eventually, in a country where there's no capital gain and you're free to use whatever currency, then that concept will be easy. But definitely, I agree with you. The fact that the capital gain tax makes things like, oh gosh, if I bought it, the price just went up and it might go up. Whatever dollars I have is what I'm going to get rid of. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Oh, yes.
One thing I heard this morning, kind of the using Bitcoin with capital gains is some gold ETFs, if you want to take out your gold, they'll deliver you the coins to your home with no capital gains. But Bitcoin ETFs, as soon as you want to self-custody, you're getting capital gains charges. And if they're both commodities, but they're not treated the same yet.
Yeah, depending on the instrument. Yeah, that's true. I'm not never liked ETF. First of all, the SLV and GLD, gold and silver ETF. They're it's completely paper, and it was meant for making sure to suck up as much money going into gold and silver into to stay in paper, virtual gold silver actually. And I was afraid that same story would happen with Bitcoin. But however, the difference is, and you might have mentioned that today, is that gold ETF, well, yeah, trust us, we've got an auditor and all that. But Bitcoin ETF is like, all you have to do, buddy, is show us the Bitcoin address where you're storing those Bitcoins that represents your, why you're hiding that from us. It's too easy. And to me, the blockchain, the best example is to look at a mountain in a village where the peak is with snow. And the whole village can look, yes, there's snow or there's no snow on the peak of the mountain. And the blockchain is, everybody can easily look at the blockchain. You don't need a third-party auditor to verify if there's snow on top of the mountain. And so with this, for the Bitcoin ETF, at least the advantage is if they're at least backing up. But to extract that or to, they didn't make it easy. I guess it might have been part of the reason why, well, we're going to accept ETF, but with these restrictions. Yes? You had a question?
I was just going to comment that most of the companies offering ETFs are not being transparent.
Yeah.
I think ARC is one of the few companies offering Bitcoin ETFs, and they are showing their their Bitcoin.
Bitcoin address? Okay.
Yeah, they're showing.
Yeah.
Fidelity as well. I was just aware of ARC.
I tend to believe that those who do show the Bitcoin address, there will be more people that will flock to them. So there'll be a free market competition of at least showing, well, okay, we'll at least prove them we do have them.
Except for people who don't recognize the danger.
Yes. Education is important. All right, thank you so much.